my namesake, Maher, was head of NPR, and she said, "We're completely unbiased. Give me a break, lady." I mean, they're crazy far left.
If you look on the right side, Jamie, where it says the truth is a distraction from getting things done, that is such a fucking Orwellian thing to say. Click on that just so you can hear her say this, because it's so bananas that someone would say this out loud and not think it's...
One of the most significant differences, critical for moving from polarization to productivity, is that the Wikipedians who write these articles aren't actually focused on finding the truth.
Oh, no.
They're working for something that's a little bit more attainable, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years there, I actually believe that they're onto something. That for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth isn't necessarily the best place to start. In fact, I think our reverence for the truth might have become
what?
A bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
What?
Oh my God.
Bill Maher has taken direct aim at NPR, calling them out for biased reporting. The exchange was both fiery and funny, exactly the kind of clash you'd expect from him. NPR is supposed to represent an impartial voice in journalism, delivering the news without leaning one way or another. But reality tells a different story. Instead of staying neutral, NPR appears to have picked a side. And here's the twist. Even though their slant occasionally favored him, Maher wasn't about to let that slide. True to his style, he blasted the outlet for failing at the very mission it claims to uphold. The result? A brutal takedown that left no room for excuses. All right, let's get into it.
NPR and PBS testified before Congress this week amid accusations of liberal bias. Should the government continue to send taxpayer dollars to public broadcasters? Well, a little background here. I mean, they've been after them the Republicans have wanted to get rid of PBS for as long as I can remember. This crowd will probably do it. I mean, I also read my namesake, Maher, was head of NPR, and she said, "We're completely unbiased. Give me a break, lady." I mean, they're crazy far left.
Maher didn't pull any punches. He kicked things off by flat out saying what many already believe. PBS and NPR lean heavily to the left. And honestly, no matter how much their executives try to deny it, the evidence is there. Take April 2024, for example, when one of NPR's own senior editors, Uri Berliner, admitted publicly that the network had completely bought into a progressive worldview. That wasn't a conservative talking point. That was an insider confession. And it doesn't stop there. NPR's CEO, Maher, acknowledged that the network chose not to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story when it mattered most. That's not just an oversight, it's a selective mistake. Then, in 2025, both NPR and PBS faced questions from Congress about their constant emphasis on gender, race, and identity politics. Neutral and balanced? Hardly. Maher called this out directly, even labeling some of their content as racist. The whole exchange got heated fast, and it was classic Maher, unfiltered, relentless, and impossible to ignore.
I think we're past the age, really, where the government, first of all, why do we need to subsidize? Why can't we have outlets like this? And we're so polarized. These outlets became popular at a time when Republicans and Democrats didn't hate each other and weren't at each other's throats and didn't think each other was an existential threat. In that world, you can't have places like this, I think, anymore. They have to be private.
When you think about it, PBS and NPR's heavy reliance on government funding makes them easy targets for political influence. Any administration, whether left or right, could quietly use them to rewrite the narrative to suit its own agenda. What should be neutral reporting can quickly morph into state-approved propaganda under that kind of structure. And if a network is propped up by taxpayer dollars, outside pressure has a way of turning into inside messaging. Anyway, let's keep moving.
I think Uri Berliner, ex-NPR employer, his piece this week, where he said that they should just let go of the funding. I love NPR. I listen to NPR almost every day, have since 1975, when my parents used to play it in our Chevrolet Caprice when I was like 9 years old. I love it for its point of view, but since 2020, it has no longer been general. I remember in 2021, my then 9-year-old asked me, and of course she has no sense of context, I don't pump her full of things like this. She said from the back seat, in a very different car, she said, "Daddy, why is it that NPR is always playing the same thing?" And I said, "What do you mean the same thing?" And I swear she said, now she doesn't have a vocabulary, but she said, "It's always about how somebody can't do something." And that's what she was getting at, was that. I wouldn't have said that about the NPR that I knew back in the day, and I wouldn't have said it 10 years ago, but that is what it is now.
And here's where Maher nailed it. Leading up to last year's election, NPR seemed fixated on Trump, tracking his every word, analyzing every move. Their own public editor even admitted that the sheer amount of airtime, along with the way his remarks were repeated, dissected, and endlessly debated, raised a wave of criticism. Many felt it crossed a line. But here's the catch. Not all of this coverage looked like truth-seeking journalism. At times, it felt less like reporting and more like a campaign to magnify every slip, spin, misunderstandings, and pile pressure on undecided voters. If the goal was to stir dissatisfaction with Trump, the coverage sure gave off that impression.
Funding NPR is crazy. Like this, you can't have a completely biased, one-sided media organization that's funded by the government and taxpayers. That's crazy. And they went over all the amount of people that were on NPR that were Democrats. It was 100%.
Yeah.
It's like out of 87 people, it's 100%.
So, and look at the New York Times.
Yeah.
I mean, so that none of that should be a surprise to anybody who's.
But the New York Times is at least a privately funded company.
Right.
I mean, it's like NPR relied on tax money, and there's this giant outrage that the government's going to defund.
The numbers tell the story. Around 80% of NPR's newsroom identifies as Democrat. Let that sink in for a moment. This isn't just any private outlet with its own political agenda. This is a taxpayer-supported organization funded by people like you and me. With that kind of backing, the bare minimum expectation should be balance. Imagine if the newsroom were evenly split, half Democrat, half Republican. At least then, we'd see a genuine mix of perspectives. Instead, one side dominates nearly every discussion, while the other is pushed to the margins inside a media echo chamber. The result? Reporting that feels skewed and a growing loss of public trust in journalism as a whole. Maher zeroed in on this imbalance, and by doing so, he shined a spotlight on just how deeply rooted the unfairness really is.
The reality is the internet exists, and you don't need to publicly fund something that's clearly biased when the internet exists.
Right.
You can get whatever you want. If you want to just absorb and consume only left-wing media, there's so much available. You can go find it. But our tax dollars should not be going to that.
No. And to be fair, if anybody wants to know what the hell's going on in the news, they can just listen to the President's Daily Brief podcast, right?
Oh, your podcast.
I'm good, right? Yeah, that's boy, I just stuck that in there.
I can't find this one.
Joe Rogan hits the mark on this one. In today's world, the internet is everywhere, accessible to anyone with a phone, tablet, or even the most basic computer. That changes the game completely. You don't have to depend on media giants or government-backed outlets anymore when authentic, unfiltered news is just a click away. One of the internet's greatest strengths is that it breaks up monopolies. You're no longer stuck with the version of events a handful of elite journalists decide to promote. Instead, you can turn to hundreds of independent, credible sources, compare how they tackle the same issue, and then form your own opinion. Of course, you'll run into confusion and misinformation, but that's where discernment matters. With a little effort, you can uncover genuine reporting, real investigations, and viewpoints the mainstream tends to overlook. In a media landscape that so often feels one-sided, the internet stands out as the one place where true choice and balance still exist.
It concerns you. That's fantastic.
As far as accusations that we're biased, I would stand up and say, please show me a story that concerns you, because we want to know and we want to bring that conversation back to our newsroom.
And then all this fat phobia and its racist past and present. Some white people may choose thumbs up because it feels neutral, but some academics argue that opting out, what does that mean? Thumbs up signals lacks awareness about white privilege, akin to society associating whiteness with being raceless. What?
God.
What does that mean?
Or how about how racism became a marketing tool for country music?
Oh, yeah.
NPR has long claimed to be impartial and fair, but the numbers and the content tell another story. Even a quick look at their website reveals a constant stream of coverage tilted heavily toward Democrats. On the other hand, stories that might reflect poorly on Republicans are often minimized, buried, or ignored altogether. The consistency of this pattern makes it hard to dismiss as coincidence. That's why Trump's argument to cut funding for NPR and PBS resonates with so many. Why should taxpayers continue to fund an outlet that doesn't reflect the full political spectrum of the country? If public money is going to support a newsroom, the public deserves reporting that's balanced, not biased. As it stands, NPR hasn't shown it has earned that investment or the trust that comes with it.
Jamie, where it says the truth is a distraction from getting things done. That is such a fucking Orwellian thing to say. Click on that just so you can hear her say this, because it's so bananas that someone would say this out loud and not think it's...
One of the most significant differences, critical for moving from polarization to productivity, is that the Wikipedians who write these articles aren't actually focused on finding the truth.
Oh, no.
They're working for something that's a little bit more attainable, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years there, I actually believe that they're onto something. That for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth isn't necessarily the best place to start. In fact, I think our reverence for the truth might have become
What?
a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done.
What?
Oh my God.
And there it is. At its core, NPR has never truly been about uncovering timeless truth. Instead, it has shaped consensus, carefully steering audiences toward predetermined conclusions. Rather than presenting facts and trusting viewers to decide for themselves, the network often frames stories to nudge people toward a preferred outcome. And who gains the most from that? The Democrats. NPR has become a reliable platform for advancing progressive goals and reinforcing left-leaning narratives. Whether the subject is legislation or cultural battles, dissenting opinions are not only sidelined but often mocked, leaving less room for genuine journalism and more space for quiet indoctrination dressed up as public service. Critics argue that this shift has turned NPR from a watchdog of the people into a megaphone for the woke. Even Bill Maher, never one to shy away from calling out hypocrisy, saw it for what it was.
To admit that they blew the whole thing way out of proportion, because as always with media these days, they don't cover what's most important, just what's most fun to watch. There are 15.2 million college students in the U.S. and 2,300 have been arrested. That's 1/67th of 1%, and half of the ones in New York weren't even students. But we were given the false impression that these protesters are the voice of their generation, having found a cause for which they were willing to go to the tents and to the barricades. Oh, please, these kids are more violent when their team wins a championship.
Exactly. Maher nailed it. Today's media doesn't put truth or moral responsibility at the top of its list. What it chases instead are stories that look flashy, generate clicks, and spark attention. Every small incident is blown up into a spectacle, every political clash turned into a performance. And let's be real, the driving forces are money and celebrity. Outrage sells, scandal trends, exaggeration keeps ratings alive. Fact-checking often comes as an afterthought because the real goal is to be the first headline in your feed. The result is a news cycle built on entertainment rather than understanding, thriving on drama instead of depth. Maher's point is clear. When journalism starts acting more like a reality show than a source of information, society is the one that pays the price. Without accountability and accuracy, what we get isn't news, it's just noise.
These kids chant, the whole world is watching. They're right. But only because you assholes with the cameras won't show anything else. Isn't there a bear in a swimming pool somewhere you should be covering?
In today's media landscape, outrage and spectacle are the perfect fuel. Conflict draws clicks, and news outlets know it. They highlight every disruption, especially if it can be framed as defiance against the establishment. A small protest with a few hundred people suddenly becomes a headline-grabbing upheaval. A street fight? That's spun into a symbol of nationwide chaos. The goal isn't always to reflect reality, it's to craft a story that hooks the audience. Anger and fear sell far better than calm or stability. That's why the shouting matches and violent clips dominate the screen, and the result is a warped perception where minor disputes are magnified into supposed national crises, all for the sake of ratings. Bill Maher's sharp critique of NPR cuts right to the heart of the issue. Journalism has drifted away from truth and balance. What we get now is agenda-driven spectacle packaged as news. And if nothing changes, propaganda could one day fully replace journalism in America. That's all for today's video. If you found this breakdown useful, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this.